The lawyer's pen scratched across the paper, and with each stroke, I felt my 3 children disappear from my life. Not physically. They were all sitting in that mahogany-paneled office in downtown Cedar Falls, dressed in their expensive clothes, wearing their rehearsed expressions of concern. Thomas in his navy suit that cost more than my monthly grocery bill. Rachel with her designer handbag that she kept checking like it might run away. David staring at his phone, his leg bouncing with that nervous energy he'd had since he was a boy. But I knew. I knew that the moment I signed that document, everything would change. My name is Margaret Eleanor Whitmore. I am 68 years old, and this is the story of how I lost 3 children to save one. It started 6 months ago in my 2-story colonial house on Maple Drive, the house my husband Robert built with his own hands before cancer took him 3 years back. The house with the wraparound porch where we used to watch thunderstorms roll across the Iowa fields. The house with the magnolia tree in the front yard that bloomed every April like clockwork. The house with 42 years of memories pressed into every floorboard, every creaking stair, every window that rattled when the wind blew hard from the west. I was sitting in my reading chair by the bay window, the afternoon sun making golden patterns on the hardwood floor, when my oldest son Thomas called. "Mom, we need to talk about your living situation. Not how are you feeling? Not I've been thinking about you. Not I miss you, Mom. Just business. Always business with Thomas. My living situation is fine, sweetheart. I'm exactly where I want to be. That's the problem, Mom." His voice had that edge to it, that tone he used in his real estate office when he was closing a deal he didn't want to lose. You want to be in a house that's too big for you, too hard to maintain. Dad's been gone for 3 years now. Don't you think it's time? Time. That word people use when they mean give up. Time for what, Thomas? A pause. I heard a woman's voice in the background, sharp and insistent. His wife, Patricia. She was always in the background, whispering, directing, like a stage manager Thomas couldn't see but always obeyed. We've been looking at some really nice assisted living facilities. Meadowbrook Gardens has an opening. It's only 20 minutes from our house in Des Moines. You'd have your own apartment, meals prepared for you, activities every day, people your own age to talk to. I'm not going to Meadowbrook Gardens. Mom, be reasonable. What if you fall? What if something happens and you're alone? What if you forget to turn off the stove or lock the door at night? Then I fall. Then something happens. That's called living, Thomas. That's called being stubborn. I looked out the window at Mrs. Henderson next door, watering her roses like she did every afternoon at 4 o'clock. She was 83 and still living in her house, still tending her garden, still driving herself to church on Sundays. Thomas, I'm 68 years old, not 90. I walk 2 miles every morning. I volunteer at the library on Tuesdays. I can still remember what I had for breakfast and what year you were born. I don't need Meadowbrook Gardens. Not yet. But what about next year? What about when you're 70? 75? We're trying to plan ahead, Mom. We're trying to be responsible. Responsible. Another word that didn't mean what it used to. I hung up. Not out of anger. Out of exhaustion. Because that was the 3rd time that month he'd brought up Meadowbrook Gardens, and I knew it wasn't concern that drove those calls. It was calculation. 2 days later, my daughter Rachel showed up unannounced. She never came unannounced before. She always called 2 days in advance, always scheduled our visits like dental appointments, always arrived exactly on time with her planner and her color-coded calendar and her hair highlighted to perfection. But that Thursday, she just appeared on my porch at noon with a paper bag from that organic cafe she loved, the one in Iowa City where a sandwich cost $18 and tasted like cardboard with sprouts. Mom, I brought lunch. She held up the bag like it was a prize. Quinoa salad and that green juice you like. I'd never said I liked green juice. I'd said it once tasted interesting, which in my generation meant terrible, but I'm too polite to say so. We sat at the kitchen table, the same oak table where I'd fed her breakfast every morning for 18 years. Where she'd done her homework and told me about her first boyfriend and cried when she didn't get into her first choice college. She picked at her quinoa salad. I watched her not eat. Thomas called me, she finally said. I figured. He's worried about you. He's worried about this house. She looked up, startled. Her eyes, my eyes, the same hazel green her grandmother had, searched my face like she was seeing me for the first time in years. That's not fair, Mom. Isn't it? Rachel set down her fork. Mom, have you thought about what happens to this place when you're gone? Have you thought about the estate? About how we're supposed to divide everything? The house, the furniture, Dad's tools in the garage, all of it. There it was. The real lunch topic. I'm not gone yet, Rachel. I know, but we need to plan. We need to know what your wishes are. Thomas and I have been talking, and we think it might be easier if. If what? If I sell now so you can split the money while I'm still alive to watch you fight over it. We're not going to fight. I looked at my daughter, this beautiful woman I'd raised, who used to bring me dandelions from the yard and call them wishes. Who used to climb into my lap when she was scared and press her face against my neck until she felt safe again. Yes, you will, I said quietly. She left 20 minutes later. She didn't finish her $18 salad. She didn't take the container with her. Just left it on my counter like trash. That night, my youngest, David, sent a text message. Not a call. A text. Mom, can we talk about getting your will updated? It's been a while. Just want to make sure everything is in order. Love you. Love you. 2 words at the end of a sentence about paperwork and death. 2 words that used to mean something, now just punctuation, like a period or a comma. I sat in the dark living room, holding my phone, the screen glowing in my hands like a tiny cold sun. And I realized something that made my chest ache in a way I hadn't felt since Robert died. My children were preparing for my death like it was a business merger. They were already fighting over assets I hadn't even left yet. And not one of them had asked me how I was feeling, if I was lonely, if I needed anything that wasn't related to property and wills and Meadowbrook Gardens. The house creaked around me. The refrigerator hummed in the kitchen. Outside, a dog barked 3 times and went silent. I'd raised 3 children in this house. I'd bandaged their scraped knees on that front porch. I'd taught them to ride bikes on this street. I'd stayed up all night when they were sick, when they were heartbroken, when they needed me. And now they were counting the days until I was gone so they could sell the house where all those memories lived. Have you ever realized that the people you raised, the people you loved more than your own life, were counting down the minutes until you disappeared? Tell me in the comments, because I need to know I'm not the only one who's felt this kind of loneliness. The next morning, I called my lawyer. My lawyer's name was Edmund Price. He'd been handling legal matters for my family since Robert and I bought the house in 1982. He was 73 now, with white hair that stood up like he'd been shocked, and reading glasses he wore on a chain around his neck like a librarian. Margaret, you just updated your will 2 years ago, he said when I called. I know, Edmund. I need to change it again. Silence on the line. Then, carefully, like he was navigating a minefield, what kind of changes are we talking about? The kind where my children don't get what they expect. Another pause. Longer this time. Margaret, are you sure about this? These decisions can cause family rifts that never heal. I've seen it happen. Good people stop speaking for decades over estate disputes. Edmund, the rift is already here. I'm just making it official. We scheduled an appointment for the following week. But before I could make any decisions about wills and estates and who gets what when I'm gone, I needed to do something I should have done months ago. I needed to test them. That Saturday, I called a family meeting. All 3 children. All 3 spouses. Everyone gathered in my living room at 2 o'clock, sitting on the furniture they'd probably already mentally divided among themselves. I'd made coffee and set out the china cups my mother had given me on my wedding day, the ones with the tiny blue flowers painted by hand in Portugal. Patricia didn't touch hers. She was on some kind of cleanse that apparently included being rude to your mother-in-law's hospitality. Thomas sat on the sofa with his arms crossed. Rachel had her phone out, ready to take notes like this was a corporate meeting. David sat on the piano bench, looking everywhere except at me. I wanted to talk to you all about the house, I began. Thomas sat forward immediately. Rachel's thumbs hovered over her phone screen. David's leg started that nervous bouncing again. I've been thinking about what you said, Thomas. About Meadowbrook Gardens. His face lit up. Actually lit up, like a child seeing presents under the Christmas tree. Like he'd just won something. I think you might be right. This house is too big. Too much maintenance. Too many memories. Rachel was nodding, her highlighted hair catching the afternoon light. Mom, I think this is really wise. Really mature of you to recognize your limitations. Limitations. As if staying in the home you built was a limitation. So I've decided to sell it. Smiles all around the room. Patricia squeezed Thomas's hand. Rachel actually looked up from her phone. David stopped bouncing his leg. But, I continued, watching their faces, I'm not moving to Meadowbrook. The smiles faltered. Just slightly. Like a record skipping. I'm selling the house and using the money to travel. I've always wanted to see Europe. Your father and I talked about it for years, but we never went. So I'm thinking 6 months in Italy, maybe a year in France. I might rent a small villa in Tuscany, take painting classes, learn to make real pasta from Italian grandmothers who actually know what they're doing. The silence was so complete I could hear the clock ticking in the hallway. The same clock that had ticked through 42 years of birthdays and Christmases and ordinary Tuesdays. Thomas cleared his throat. The sound was ugly. Mom, that's not. I mean, at your age, is that really safe? I'm 68, not 90. But the money, Rachel started, then stopped herself. But it was too late. The truth had already slipped out. The money is mine, I finished for her. The house is mine. The estate is mine. And I can do whatever I want with it. Including spending every last penny on Italian wine and French cheese if that's what makes me happy. Patricia leaned forward. She had that look on her face, the one she got when she was about to say something she thought was helpful but was actually cruel. Margaret, don't you think that's a little selfish? What about your grandchildren's college funds? What about leaving something for the next generation? I paid for all 3 of my children's college educations, I said, my voice calm. I paid for Thomas's first car. I paid for Rachel's wedding. I loaned David $20,000 to start his business, money he never paid back. I think I've contributed enough to the next generation. David finally looked at me, my youngest. My baby. The one who used to crawl into bed with me during thunderstorms and press his face against my shoulder until the lightning stopped. So you're just going to spend our inheritance on a vacation? Our inheritance. Not my money. Not my life savings. Not the home I'd built with their father, brick by brick, payment by payment, sacrifice by sacrifice. Our inheritance. Like I was already dead. Like I was just a bank account with a heartbeat, waiting to stop so they could make their withdrawal. Yes, I said simply. That's exactly what I'm going to do. Thomas stood up. Mom, I don't think you're thinking clearly about this. Maybe we should schedule that appointment with Dr. Shaw after all. Just to make sure To make sure I'm what, Thomas? Competent. In my right mind. Capable of making my own decisions about my own life. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. They left within 10 minutes. No one finished their coffee from the blue-flowered cups. No one said goodbye. They just filed out like employees leaving a meeting that didn't go their way, getting into their expensive cars and driving away from the house they were already planning to sell. And not one of them called to check on me for the next 3 weeks. But someone else did. His name was Marcus Reed. He was 43 years old, and technically, he wasn't my son. He was David's best friend from childhood, the boy who'd spent more time in my kitchen than his own from the time he was 7 until he graduated high school. Marcus had lost his own mother to breast cancer when he was 15. After that, he'd sort of adopted my family. Or maybe we adopted him. He came to every Thanksgiving dinner, every 4th of July barbecue, every Christmas morning. He called me Mom Maggie from the time he was 8, and I'd never asked him to stop. Even after he and David drifted apart in their 20s, David moving to Chicago for business school, Marcus staying in Cedar Falls to run his father's construction company, Marcus never stopped visiting. He showed up once a month, sometimes with groceries he knew I liked, sometimes with a story about a job site, sometimes just to sit on the porch and talk about nothing and everything. He never asked for anything. He never wanted anything. He just showed up. The day after my children stopped calling, Marcus appeared on my porch with a bag of bagels from Anderson's Bakery and a container of the cream cheese with chives that I loved from the deli on Washington Street. "Heard you're going to Italy," he said, settling into the wicker chair next to mine. "News travels fast in a small town. David's pretty upset. Called me last night. Talked for an hour about how you're making a mistake, how someone needs to talk sense into you." Marcus unwrapped a bagel and spread cream cheese on it with the plastic knife from the deli. I told him maybe someone needed to talk sense into him instead. I looked at this man, not a boy anymore, but the same crooked smile, the same kind eyes, the same way of sitting with his elbows on his knees like he had all the time in the world. "Are you really going to Italy, Mom Maggie?" "I don't know, Marcus. I just know I can't stay here watching my children circle like vultures waiting for me to die." "They're not waiting for you to die. They're scared." "Scared of what?" "Of losing you. They're just expressing it really, really badly." He took a bite of his bagel, chewed thoughtfully. "My dad did something similar after Mom died. Started talking about selling the house, moving to Florida, spending all the money. I freaked out. I was 18 and stupid, and I thought he was losing his mind." "What happened?" "He sat me down and told me something I'll never forget. He said, 'Marcus, I raised you to be independent. I did my job. Now let me live my life without feeling like I owe you something for being your father.'" Marcus looked at me. It hurt to hear it. But he was right. We sat in silence for a while, watching Mrs. Henderson water her roses across the street. "Mom Maggie, can I ask you something?" "Anything, sweetheart." "If you were me, what would you do? If you had to give your money to someone, who would you give it to?" I thought about that question. Really thought about it. I'd give everything to whoever loved me, not whoever wanted my stuff. Marcus nodded slowly. "Yeah, that's what I'd do too." That afternoon, after Marcus left, I sat at my kitchen table with a pen and paper. I made a list of every time one of my children had visited in the past year. Every phone call. Every text message. Every "How are you, Mom?" that wasn't followed by an "also" about the house. The list was short. Painfully short. Then I made a second list. Every time Marcus had visited. Every bag of bagels. Every time he'd fixed something in the house without me asking, the leaking faucet, the loose step on the porch, the gutter that was coming loose. That list was long. I looked at both lists for a long time. And I made a decision that would change everything. But before I could act on it, before I could call Edmund and tell him what I'd decided, I needed to know the truth. I needed to know exactly what my children were planning. So that Tuesday, while Thomas thought I was at the library volunteering, I went to his old bedroom upstairs. The room we'd converted into a home office after he moved out. The room where he sometimes worked when he visited, making phone calls about real estate deals, typing on his laptop. I told myself I was just looking for my reading glasses. That I'd left them up there the week before when I was dusting. But that was a lie. I was looking for the truth. And what I found destroyed me. My reading glasses were exactly where I remembered leaving them. On the desk in Thomas's old room, sitting on top of a manila folder I didn't remember putting there. I picked them up. The folder slipped. Papers scattered across the hardwood floor like leaves in autumn. And that's when I saw it. A property assessment for my house. Not one. 3 of them. All from different real estate companies. All dated within the last 2 months. All addressed to Thomas Whitmore at his Des Moines office. Not Margaret Whitmore. Thomas. My hands started shaking as I picked up the first one. Property assessment for 847, Maple Drive, Cedar Falls, Iowa. Estimated market value, $425,000. Recommend immediate sale due to rising property values in area. Comparable sales attached. I picked up the second one. Preliminary evaluation, $438,000. Strong buyer interest in established neighborhoods. Prime development opportunity. Development opportunity. Like my home was just empty land waiting to be bulldozed. The third assessment was the most detailed. 10 pages. Photographs of every room in my house, taken from angles I recognized. Someone had been here. Inside my home. Taking pictures. Property shows excellent bones but requires modernization. Kitchen and bathrooms original to 1982 construction. Recommend cosmetic updates before listing to maximize return. Estimated value with improvements, $465,000. I sat down hard in the desk chair. The same chair where Thomas used to do his homework. Where I used to help him with algebra problems, back when he still needed me for something other than real estate transactions. But there was more. I picked up another paper. This one wasn't a property assessment. It was an application. Meadowbrook Gardens Assisted Living Community. 10 pages long. Every line filled out in neat handwriting I didn't recognize. Patricia's handwriting. Name, Margaret Eleanor Whitmore. Date of birth, March 15, 1956. Current address, 847, Maple Drive, Cedar Falls, Iowa. Emergency contact, Thomas Whitmore, son. And at the bottom, a signature. My signature. Except I'd never signed this document. I'd never even seen it before. But someone had signed my name. Someone who'd practiced enough to make it look almost real. Almost, but not quite. The M in Margaret was wrong. I always looped it twice. This one only looped once. My breath came faster. My chest felt tight. I kept reading. Reason for placement, patient showing signs of cognitive decline. Family reports incidents of confusion, memory loss, and difficulty with daily living activities. Requires supervised care environment. Patient. They were calling me a patient. I shuffled through more papers, my hands trembling so badly I could barely hold them. Power of attorney documents. Drafted but not signed. Giving Thomas complete control over my medical decisions, my finances, my property. A letter from a doctor I'd never heard of. Dr. Vernon Shaw, Geriatric Psychiatry. Dated 3 weeks ago. Margaret Whitmore, DOB the 15th of March, 1956. At the request of the family, I am providing this preliminary assessment based on reported behaviors and documented incidents. Mrs. Whitmore presents with symptoms consistent with early-stage dementia, including memory impairment, forgetting to turn off stove, repeated questions, confusion about dates and times, difficulty managing finances, resistance to accepting help, paranoid ideation regarding family members. Recommend formal evaluation to determine competency and need for supervised care. I read it 3 times. Each time, the words got worse. Memory impairment. Confusion. Paranoid ideation. They were building a case. A medical case to prove I was losing my mind. But I'd never met Dr. Shaw. I'd never forgotten to turn off the stove. I managed my own finances perfectly, balanced my checkbook every month, paid my bills on time, had better credit than all 3 of my children combined. This was fiction. Careful, documented fiction designed to make me look incompetent. I kept digging through the papers, finding more evidence of a plan I'd never suspected. Email printouts. The sender names made my stomach turn. From email protected to email protected, subject, timeline. Mom's resisting harder than we thought. Patricia suggested we move faster on the Shaw evaluation. Once we have his official diagnosis, we can file for emergency guardianship. Rachel, can you be there for the appointment next week? We need multiple witnesses to her confusion. House could list as soon as we get her placed. I've been talking to developers. One is interested in tearing down and building townhomes. We'd clear $1.2 million after split. 40-30-30 as discussed. Tom. 40-30-30. They'd already decided how to divide the money from selling my home. From email protected to email protected, subject, timeline. I'll be there. Should I bring up the Italy thing? Make it sound like she's having delusions about traveling? That might help Shaw's evaluation. Also, I found 3 more china sets in her attic. The good stuff. We should inventory everything before we move her. Don't want anything to disappear. Rachel. My daughter. My only daughter. Talking about my dreams like they were symptoms of mental illness. The last email was from David. Sent just 5 days ago. From email protected to email protected, subject, Marcus. Marcus knows something's up. He asked me yesterday why we were all pushing Mom so hard about Meadowbrook. I told him we were worried about her safety. He said, "Your mom seems sharper than all of us combined. Maybe you should worry about yourselves." He's always been on her side. We need to keep him out of this. Don't invite him to anything. Don't tell him about the Shaw appointment. Once it's done, it's done. She'll be taken care of, the house will sell, and everyone gets what they need. Everyone gets what they need. Not what I need. What they need. I sat in that room for I don't know how long. The afternoon sun moved across the floor, stretching shadows until they covered everything. Outside, a lawnmower started up somewhere. Life going on like normal while my entire world cracked apart. This wasn't concern. This wasn't children worried about an aging mother who might fall or forget something. This was a coordinated plan. Detailed. Calculated. With timelines and dollar amounts and forged signatures. My children weren't preparing for my death. They were planning my erasure. They were going to have me declared mentally incompetent, lock me in Meadowbrook Gardens, sell my house, and split the money. All while I was still alive. Still breathing. Still perfectly capable of making my own decisions. And they'd created an entire paper trail to justify it. Medical reports from doctors I'd never met. Applications I'd never signed. Emails dividing up my belongings like I was already gone. I carefully put every paper back in the folder. Exactly as I'd found it. I couldn't let them know I knew. Not yet. I walked downstairs on legs that felt like water. Made myself a cup of tea I didn't drink. Sat at my kitchen table staring at nothing. The house creaked around me. Settling, like it had done for 42 years. But now every creak sounded different. Like the house was already saying goodbye. My phone buzzed. A text from Thomas. "Hey Mom, just checking in. How are you feeling today? Any confusion or memory issues we should know about? Checking in. Like a doctor monitoring symptoms. Gathering evidence." I typed back with steady hands, "I'm fine, sweetheart." Sharp as ever. 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. Then appeared again. Good. That's good. Love you. I set the phone down and did something I hadn't done since Robert's funeral. I cried. Not quiet tears. Deep, wrenching sobs that came from somewhere below my lungs, below my heart, from that place where you keep the worst truths about the people you love. I cried for the children I'd raised. For the people they used to be before money and greed and Patricia's whispering turned them into strangers. I cried for my husband, who'd been spared seeing what his children had become. And I cried for myself. For the mother who'd given everything, sacrificed everything, loved completely and discovered it wasn't enough to keep them from trying to steal my life. When I finally stopped crying, when my eyes were swollen and my throat was raw, I picked up my phone and called the one person who would understand. "Marcus. It's Mom Maggie. Can you come over? I need your help. Are you okay? You sound. I'm not okay. But I will be. Just please come." He was there in 12 minutes. I showed him everything. Every paper, every email, every piece of the plan to have me declared incompetent and locked away. Marcus read in silence. His jaw got tighter with each page. When he finished, he looked at me with eyes that were bright with unshed tears. "Mom Maggie, this is fraud. This is elder abuse. We need to call the police. We need to. We need to be smart," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "If we go to the police now, they'll say it's a family dispute. They'll say I'm a mother angry at her children. We need proof. We need them to make their move first. The Shaw appointment. It's next week." I nodded. "According to the emails, yes. Don't go. Just don't show up. If I don't show up, they'll say it's more proof I'm incompetent. That I'm too confused to keep appointments. I took his hand. Marcus, I need you to help me do something. Something that might hurt. But it's the only way to save myself. Anything. You know that. I need you to help me prove I'm the sanest person in this family. We spent the next 3 hours planning. Making calls. Gathering our own evidence. Building our own case. And by the time Marcus left that night, I understood something I should have known all along. Blood doesn't make you family. Love does. And sometimes the people who love you most aren't the ones who share your DNA. They're the ones who show up. Who stay. Who fight for you when everyone else is counting down the days until you're gone. Have you ever discovered that the people you trust most were the ones planning to betray you? Have you ever had to become a detective in your own life? Tell me your story. Because tonight, I learned that sometimes survival means investigating the people who are supposed to protect you. Tomorrow, I would go see Edmund. Tomorrow, I would start fighting back. But tonight, I sat in my house, my home, and mourned the family I thought I had. And prepared for the war I never wanted. I didn't confront them. Not yet. Edmund had been clear when I met with him the morning after finding the documents. Margaret, if you tip your hand now, they'll accelerate everything. They'll say you're paranoid, unstable. They'll use your accusations as more evidence of cognitive decline. So what do I do? Just pretend I don't know my own children are trying to lock me away? Exactly. He leaned back in his leather chair, the same chair he'd sat in when Robert and I made our first wills 40 years ago. Let them think their plan is working. Document everything. Record everything you legally can. And when they make their move, we'll be ready. So I became an actress in my own life. When Thomas called that Wednesday to check in, I kept my voice light. When Rachel texted asking if I'd thought more about downsizing, I responded with cheerful emojis. When David sent another message about updating my will, I told him we'd discuss it soon. And I waited. 3 days later, Thomas showed up unannounced. This time he brought Patricia and a man I'd never seen before. The man wore khaki pants and a polo shirt with a logo on it, Anderson and Sons Property Inspection. I was in the garden, pulling weeds from around the roses Robert had planted the year we moved in. I heard Thomas's truck pull into the driveway, heard car doors slam, heard footsteps on the gravel path. Mom, hi. Thomas's smile was too bright. Too practiced. Hope we're not interrupting. Just gardening, sweetheart. I stood up slowly, wiping dirt from my knees. My garden gloves were stained green from the stems. What brings you by? This is Rick Anderson. Thomas gestured to the stranger. He's a contractor. Does really good work. I thought since you've been talking about how hard the house is to maintain, maybe Rick could take a look around, give us an idea of what repairs might be needed. Us. Not you. Us. I haven't agreed to any repairs, Thomas. I know. But it doesn't hurt to know what we're dealing with, right? Just an assessment. No commitment. Patricia smiled at me. That thin smile that never reached her eyes. Margaret, we're just trying to help. Thomas has been so worried about you out here alone with a house that might have hidden problems. What if the roof is leaking? What if there's mold you can't see? What if? The language of manufactured concern. I looked at Rick Anderson. He had kind eyes and calloused hands. A working man who probably had no idea what he was really being brought here to do. All right, I said. Look around if you want. I watched them go through my house. Thomas pointing out things to Rick. The water stain on the ceiling in the upstairs bathroom. The crack in the foundation that had been there since 1985. The windows that were original to the house, single pane, inefficient. Rick took notes. Measured things. Took photographs. Patricia stayed with me in the kitchen. She'd made herself coffee without asking, using the fancy espresso machine Thomas had given me last Christmas that I'd never learned how to use. You know, Margaret, Thomas showed me some really beautiful condos in Des Moines. Brand new construction. Everything on one floor. No stairs, no yard work, no maintenance. And they're right near us. You could see your grandchildren anytime you wanted. I had 4 grandchildren. I saw them maybe 3 times a year. That sounds nice, Patricia. It is nice. And you could use the money from selling this place to buy one outright. No mortgage. And you'd still have plenty left over for whatever you need. Whatever you need. Not whatever I want. Whatever I need, as defined by them. They were there for 2 hours. Rick finished his inspection. Thomas paid him in cash, right there in my driveway. I watched through the window as they talked, Rick pointing to things on his clipboard, Thomas nodding. When Rick left, Thomas and Patricia came back inside. Mom, let's sit down. We need to talk. We sat in the living room. Me in my reading chair. Thomas and Patricia on the sofa like they were holding court. Thomas pulled out a folder. Of course he had a folder. Rick says the house needs about $40,000 in repairs. The roof is 15 years past its expected lifespan. The electrical needs updating. The foundation crack is getting worse. The HVAC system is original and could fail any winter. The house is fine, Thomas. It's not fine, Mom. It's a disaster waiting to happen. And you're living in it alone. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. The concerned son pose. We've been thinking. Rachel and David and me. And we've found a buyer. My heart stopped. What? A development company. They're interested in this whole block, actually. Mrs. Henderson is selling too. They want to tear down these old houses and build something new. Townhomes. Modern, energy efficient. They've made an offer. I never put my house on the market. I know. But they approached me because of my real estate work. When I told them about your situation, they were very interested. My situation. As if I was a problem to be solved. How much? I heard myself ask. Thomas's eyes lit up. He thought I was considering it. 1.2 million. Cash. Quick close. You could be in a nice condo by Christmas. 1.2 million. The exact number from the email. They'd already made the deal. Already agreed to split it 40-30-30. And what about what I want? My voice was quieter than I intended. What you want? Patricia said it like it was a foreign concept. Margaret, you want to stay in a house that's falling apart around you. You want to keep living alone where anything could happen. That's not reasonable. That's not safe. I want, I said, each word careful and clear, to live in the house my husband built. The house where I raised my children. The house that holds every memory I have of the life we made together. That's what I want. Thomas stood up. I could see the frustration breaking through his mask of concern. Mom, you're not thinking clearly about this. I'm thinking very clearly. No, you're not. You're being emotional. You're being stubborn. He stopped himself. Took a breath. When he spoke again, his voice was controlled. Careful. Mom, I think maybe it's time we schedule that appointment with Dr. Shaw. Just to talk things through. He can help you see that we're trying to help you, not hurt you. There it was. The threat disguised as concern. Dr. Shaw. The doctor who'd written a report about me without ever meeting me. The doctor who was part of their plan to have me declared incompetent. I don't need to see Dr. Shaw. I think you do. We all do. Thomas pulled out his phone. In fact, I've already made an appointment. Next Tuesday at 10. Rachel and David will be there too. We'll all go together. Family therapy, kind of. Family therapy. With a geriatric psychiatrist who'd already decided I was mentally incompetent. Patricia stood up, smoothing her designer dress. Margaret, we're doing this because we love you. You'll understand that eventually. They left a few minutes later. Thomas left the folder on my coffee table. Inside were Rick's assessment, photos of every problem in my house, and a business card. Dr. Vernon Shaw, MD Geriatric Psychiatry specializing in dementia and cognitive decline. I sat alone in my living room after they left, holding that business card. They weren't just planning to take my house anymore. They were coming for my mind. My autonomy. My right to make decisions about my own life. And they'd just told me exactly when they were going to do it. Tuesday at 10. I had 5 days. I called Marcus first. Then Edmund. Then I did something I hadn't done in 3 years. I went to Robert's workshop in the garage, to the old filing cabinet where he'd kept important papers. I found what I was looking for in the bottom drawer, exactly where he'd told me it would be. An envelope. Sealed. With my name written on it in his handwriting. Open this if anyone tries to take the house from you. Even our children. Especially our children. I love you. Ah. My hands shook as I broke the seal. Inside was a letter. 3 pages, front and back, in Robert's careful handwriting. My dearest Margaret. If you're reading this, it means I was right to worry. It means someone is pressuring you to give up the house, and I'd bet my last dollar it's one of our kids. I need to tell you something I never told you while I was alive, because I didn't want to believe it myself. But I saw it starting, even before I got sick. I saw the way Thomas looked at the house like it was an investment. The way Rachel started asking about our finances. The way David stopped visiting unless he needed something. I want to believe I'm wrong. But I'm writing this just in case. Margaret, the house is not just property. I built it for you. Every nail, every board, every window was placed with my own hands because I wanted you to have something that could never be taken away. But I know money can change people. Even good people. Even our children. So I made arrangements. In my will, there's a clause I never mentioned. If anyone tries to force you out of that house, if anyone files for guardianship or tries to declare you incompetent, they automatically forfeit their inheritance. Everything goes to charity. They get nothing. I didn't tell you because I hoped it would never matter. But if you're reading this, it matters. Fight for the house, my love. Not because it's valuable, but because it's yours. Because you deserve to spend your remaining years in the place where we were happy. And if our children can't understand that, then they've forgotten what we taught them. I love you. I will always love you. Robert. I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it back in the envelope. My husband had known. Even before he died, he'd seen what I couldn't see. And he'd protected me from beyond the grave. Tuesday at 10, my children were going to try to take everything from me. But they didn't know I'd found their plan. They didn't know about Robert's letter. And they definitely didn't know that I'd spent the last 5 days turning their trap into mine. Sometimes the best defense is letting your enemies think they've already won. And then showing them they never had a chance. Marcus arrived at 7 that evening. I'd called him right after reading Robert's letter, and he'd dropped everything to come over. He brought Chinese takeout from Golden Dragon, the place on 5th Street that had been there since the 70s. We didn't eat right away. We just sat at my kitchen table, the letter between us, the house quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the tick of the hallway clock. Robert knew, Marcus said finally, his finger tracing the edge of the envelope. He knew they'd do this. He knew it was possible. I don't think either of us wanted to believe it was probable. Marcus looked up at me with those kind eyes that had seen too much loss for someone only 43. Mom Maggie, can I tell you something? Something I've never told anyone. Always, sweetheart. He took a deep breath. After my mom died, my dad was lost. Completely lost. He'd loved her since high school. 40 years of marriage, and then she was just gone. Cancer took her in 6 months. I reached across the table and took his hand. I remembered those months. Remembered Marcus at 15, trying to be strong, breaking down in my kitchen while I held him. Dad tried to keep going, Marcus continued. But he was drowning. Then, about a year after Mom died, he met Carol at a grief support group. I remember Carol. Do you remember how fast it happened? They were married within 6 months. Dad was so happy. He'd smile again. Laugh again. I thought maybe he'd be okay. Marcus's voice cracked slightly. He cleared his throat. Carol was nice to me at first. Really nice. Called me son. Made my favorite meals. Asked about school. But then things started changing. Little things at first. He pulled his hand back, folded his arms across his chest like he was protecting himself from a memory. She'd forget to tell me when Dad called while I was at work. She'd schedule trips without mentioning them to me, So I'd show up to visit and they'd be gone. She started redecorating the house, getting rid of my mom's things. The photos came down first. Then mom's dishes. Then her garden got ripped out and replaced with rocks and plastic plants. Oh, Marcus. I tried to talk to Dad about it. I said, "Don't you think it's too fast? Don't you want to keep some of Mom's things?" And he said, Marcus's voice broke completely. He stopped. Took a moment. He said, "Your mother is gone, Marcus. Carol is here. You need to accept that and move on." I stood up and moved to his side of the table. Put my hand on his shoulder. It got worse. Carol started talking to Dad about money. About how I was almost 30 and still dependent on him. About how he needed to focus on his retirement, his future with her. She'd say it when I was right there, like I couldn't hear her. "What did your father say?" "Nothing." That was the worst part. He just sat there and let her say those things. Marcus wiped his eyes roughly with the back of his hand. Then one day, about 3 years after they got married, Carol told Dad she was worried about me. Said I'd asked to borrow money for my business, which was a lie. I never asked, and that she thought I was only coming around because I wanted his money. Marcus, no. Dad believed her. Or maybe he wanted to believe her because it was easier than admitting he'd married someone who was isolating him from his own son. Marcus stood up, started pacing my kitchen. He called me one night. Told me we needed to establish boundaries. That I needed to stop treating him like a bank. That I was 32 years old and needed to stand on my own 2 feet. "What did you say?" I asked him. "Dad, when have I ever asked you for money? When have I ever treated you like anything but my father?" And he said he didn't want to argue about it. That Carol had shown him the texts where I'd asked for $50,000. Texts that didn't exist. Texts that didn't exist, Marcus confirmed. She'd faked them somehow. Screenshots that looked real. And he believed her over me. Marcus stopped pacing. Stood by the window, looking out at the darkening street. I stopped visiting after that. Not because I was angry, well, I was angry, but because every time I tried, Carol would be there, making comments, reminding Dad about my financial problems, watching me like I was going to steal the silverware. How long did this go on? 2 years. 2 years of barely speaking to my father. Then he had a heart attack. Massive. Died in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. I closed my eyes. I'd known Marcus's father had passed away when Marcus was 34. I hadn't known about any of this. Carol called me 3 days after the funeral. Professional. Cold. Said she'd been going through Dad's papers and wanted to let me know that his will had been updated a year before he died. Everything went to her. The house, the business, the savings. Everything. "Oh, Marcus." She said Dad told her I'd understand. That I'd been distancing myself from him anyway, so this was for the best. She sold the house within a month. Sold Dad's construction business to a competitor for a fraction of what it was worth. Then she moved to Arizona with her sister. Marcus turned to face me. His eyes were wet but his voice was steady. "I haven't seen or heard from her in 9 years. She got everything my parents built together, everything my dad worked for, and I got nothing. Not a photo album. Not a tool from Dad's workshop. Not even a Christmas ornament from when I was a kid. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. But you know what the worst part was, Mom Maggie? It wasn't the money. It wasn't even the stuff. It was that my father died believing I only loved him for what he could give me. He died thinking his own son was a parasite. And I never got to tell him that wasn't true." We stood in silence for a long moment. Outside, a car drove by slowly. A dog barked twice. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked gently. Marcus walked back to the table. Picked up Robert's letter. "Because your kids are doing to you what Carol did to my dad. They're isolating you. They're creating a narrative where you're the problem. Where you're unreasonable, stubborn, incompetent. They're building a case brick by brick, and by the time they're done, everyone will believe them. But I have Robert's letter. The will clause. Will only work if they try to force you out legally," Marcus interrupted. "But what if they don't? What if they just wear you down? Keep pushing until you're so exhausted, so lonely, so convinced that you're the problem that you just give in? I sat back down heavily. Is that what happened to your father? I think so. I think Carol convinced him that loving her meant choosing her over everything else. Over his memories. Over his son. Over himself. Marcus sat across from me again. And by the time he realized what he'd lost, if he ever realized, it was too late. So what do? You do what my father couldn't do. You fight. Not just legally, but here. He tapped his chest. You remember who you are. You don't let them convince you that you're the villain in this story. I don't feel like fighting, Marcus. I feel tired. I know. But you have something my dad didn't have. What's that? Me. He reached across the table and took both my hands. You have someone who sees what they're doing. Someone who will stand next to you and say, no, you're not crazy. No, you're not unreasonable. No, you're not the problem. My dad didn't have that. Carol made sure he was alone. But you're not alone, Mom Maggie. You have me. Tears spilled down my cheeks. Real tears. The kind that come from somewhere deep and honest. And you have Edmund, Marcus continued. And you have Robert's letter. And you have Tuesday. Tuesday when they're going to walk into Dr. Shaw's office expecting to ambush you. Expecting you to be confused and defensive and exactly what they need you to be. Marcus smiled. It was not a kind smile. We're going to give them something completely different. What's the plan? Tomorrow, we go see Edmund. We file paperwork. We prepare. And Tuesday morning, we show up to that appointment with every piece of evidence we have. We turn their trap into a trial. And we make sure that everyone in that room understands exactly what they've been trying to do. I wiped my eyes. Looked at this man who wasn't my blood but was more my son than my own sons had been in years. Why are you doing this, Marcus? Why do you keep showing up for me? He didn't hesitate. Because you showed up for me when I had nothing and no one. Because you fed me and held me and let me cry in your kitchen when my mom died. Because you never asked for anything except that I be happy. He squeezed my hands. And because someone should have done this for my dad. Someone should have fought for him. Since I couldn't do it for him, I'm going to do it for you. We sat there in my kitchen, holding hands across the oak table, while the Chinese food got cold and the sun finished setting. And I understood something I'd been trying to ignore for months. Blood doesn't make you family. Showing up does. Standing beside someone does. Fighting for them when they're too tired to fight for themselves does. My children shared my DNA. But Marcus shared my life. And on Tuesday, when everything came to a head, I knew which one mattered more. Have you ever had someone fight for you when your own family wouldn't? Have you ever learned that the people who aren't related to you can love you better than the ones who are? Tell me about them. Tell me their names. Because tonight, I want to celebrate the Marcus Reeds of the world, the ones who show up with Chinese food and courage when everyone else has given up. We spent the rest of the night planning. Making lists. Preparing for war. And for the first time in weeks, I didn't feel alone. Monday morning, I went to see my own doctor. Not Dr. Shaw, the psychiatrist my children had hired. Dr. Patricia Chen, who'd been my primary care physician for 20 years. Margaret, you look stressed, she said the moment I walked into her office. I need a favor, Patricia. A big one. I told her everything. The property assessments. The forged Meadowbrook application. The emails planning to split $1.2 million. Dr. Shaw's report diagnosing me with dementia without ever meeting me. Dr. Chen's face went from concerned to furious in about 30 seconds. They fabricated a medical diagnosis. Margaret, that's not just unethical, it's illegal. Shaw could lose his license for signing that report without examining you. I need you to examine me. Officially. Every test you can think of. Cognitive function, memory, mental status. I need documentation that I'm perfectly competent. You don't need tests for me to know that. You're one of the sharpest patients I have. I need it in writing. Dated. Notarized if possible. Something that can't be disputed. Dr. Chen spent the next 2 hours putting me through every cognitive test in her arsenal. Memory tests, puzzle tests, questions about current events, mathematics, problem solving. She checked my reflexes, my coordination, my ability to follow complex instructions. When we finished, she printed out a report on her official letterhead. Margaret Eleanor Whitmore, age 68, presents with full cognitive function. Minimental state examination score, 30/30ths, perfect. Clock drawing test, normal. 3-word recall, normal. No signs of confusion, disorientation, or memory impairment. Patient demonstrates excellent reasoning skills, clear communication, and appropriate emotional responses. In my professional opinion as her physician of 20 years, Mrs. Whitmore has complete capacity to make her own medical, financial, and personal decisions. Any suggestion otherwise is without medical foundation. She signed it, dated it, had her nurse notarize it right there in the office. Margaret, when you go to that appointment tomorrow, you take this with you. And if this Dr. Shaw tries to say you're incompetent, you hand him this and ask him how he diagnosed you without ever meeting you. I hugged her. Thank you, Patricia. Thank your husband. Robert called me about 6 months before he died. Asked me if I'd look after you. Said he was worried about the kids. I told him he was being paranoid. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. I should have listened to him. From Dr. Chen's office, I went straight to Edmund's law office. Marcus met me there. We sat in the conference room with Edmund and laid out everything. The property assessments. The forged documents. The emails. Dr. Shaw's fraudulent report. Dr. Chen's legitimate evaluation. Edmund reviewed each page carefully, making notes in his precise handwriting. This is a strong case for fraud and attempted financial exploitation, he said finally. But there's something you need to know, Margaret. Something I discovered this morning. The way he said it made my stomach drop. What? He pulled out a legal document. Official court letterhead. Case number stamped at the top. Your children filed for a competency hearing. Last Friday. You're being served this afternoon. The room tilted. Marcus grabbed my arm to steady me. What does that mean? My voice sounded far away. It means they've petitioned the court to have you declared mentally incompetent. They're requesting emergency guardianship pending a full evaluation. The hearing is scheduled for next Monday. But the appointment with Dr. Shaw is tomorrow. I thought. The appointment tomorrow is window dressing, Edmund interrupted. They need it to look like they tried to help you voluntarily before going to court. They'll claim you refused treatment, acted paranoid, demonstrated the exact behaviors Shaw predicted in his preliminary report. Marcus stood up, started pacing. This is a setup. The whole thing is a setup. Yes, Edmund agreed. And it's sophisticated. They have a psychiatrist willing to testify. They have documented concerns spanning months. They have property assessments showing the house needs extensive repairs they claim you're unable to recognize. They have your refusal to move to assisted living as evidence of poor judgment. But I have Dr. Chen's evaluation, I said. Doesn't that prove? It helps. But their lawyer, and they have retained a lawyer, I checked, will argue that you sought out Dr. Chen specifically to get a favorable opinion. That you're doctor shopping. That you manipulated the tests because you knew what they were looking for. The room was silent except for the tick of Edmund's desk clock. The same sound as the clock in my hallway. Time passing. Time running out. What happens if they win? I asked quietly. Edmund set down his pen. Looked at me with those tired eyes that had seen too many family destructions. If the court grants emergency guardianship, Thomas becomes your legal guardian. He makes all decisions, medical, financial, residential. He can move you to Meadowbrook Gardens that day. He can sell your house. He can control your bank accounts. You become, essentially, a legal child. And contesting guardianship once it's granted is extremely difficult. How difficult? Years. Tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees. And the longer you're in guardianship, the more the court assumes it's necessary. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. I felt something break inside me. Not loudly. Just a small, quiet crack, like ice on a pond in early spring. So they win. They're going to win. No. Marcus stopped pacing. No, they're not. Marcus, you heard Edmund. They have doctors, lawyers, documentation. And we have the truth, Marcus interrupted. We have their emails planning to split the money before you're even gone. We have the forged Meadowbrook application. We have Dr. Shaw's report that was written before he met you. We have Robert's letter. None of that stops a competency hearing, Edmund said gently. Then we don't wait for the hearing. Marcus looked at Edmund. What if we go on the offensive? What if we file first? File what? A restraining order. Against all three of them. For elder abuse, fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud. We bring everything to a judge before they bring you to one. Edmund was quiet for a long moment. That's actually not a bad strategy. If we can get an emergency protective order, it would prevent them from having any contact with Margaret, including forcing her to attend medical evaluations or court hearings. It would give us time to build our case. How much time? Weeks. Maybe a month. Long enough to investigate Dr. Shaw, to depose Thomas and Rachel and David, to expose the whole conspiracy before they can act on it. I looked between Marcus and Edmund. You really think this could work? I think, Edmund said slowly, that your children made a critical mistake. They got greedy. They moved too fast. They left evidence everywhere. If we act now, before that appointment tomorrow, before they expect it, we might be able to stop them. What do we need to do? Edmund pulled out a legal pad. Started writing. We file the protective order tonight. Emergency filing. I'll call Judge Morrison, she's sympathetic to elder abuse cases. We'll need statements from you, from Marcus, from Dr. Chen. We'll need all the evidence compiled and notarized. And we'll need to move fast because once we file, they'll know we're coming. How fast? He checked his watch. We have 8 hours before the courthouse closes. If we work straight through, we can have everything filed by 5. Marcus pulled out his phone. I'll call Dr. Chen, get her statement. Mom Maggie, you need to write down everything. Every conversation, every pressure tactic, every time they made you feel crazy or incompetent. Dates if you remember them. I remember all of them, I said quietly. For the next 6 hours, we worked. Edmund drafted legal documents. Marcus coordinated with Dr. Chen and tracked down Rick Anderson, the contractor, who agreed to provide a statement that Thomas had asked him to inflate the repair estimates. I wrote page after page of my children's betrayals, each memory more painful than the last. At 4:30, Edmund's paralegal drove everything to the courthouse. We waited in his office, drinking cold coffee, watching the clock. At 5:15, Edmund's phone rang. He answered. Listened. Said thank you and hung up. Judge Morrison signed the emergency protective order. Effective immediately. Thomas, Rachel, and David are prohibited from contacting you, coming to your home, or making any financial or medical decisions on your behalf pending a full hearing in 3 weeks. I should have felt relief. Victory. Something. Instead, I felt hollow. They're going to be served tonight, Edmund continued. Sheriff's deputies will deliver the orders within the hour. They'll know by dinner time. They're going to be so angry, I whispered. Let them be angry, Marcus said. They were planning to lock you up tomorrow, Mom Maggie. They were going to take everything from you. Their anger is nothing compared to what they were willing to do. He was right. I knew he was right. But they were still my children. And I was still their mother. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a small voice kept asking, how did we get here? How did the babies I nursed and raised and loved turn into people who would do this to me? That night, I went home alone. Marcus offered to stay, but I needed to be by myself. Needed to walk through my house and remember why I was fighting for it. I went room by room. The kitchen where I'd taught all 3 children to bake. The living room where we'd opened Christmas presents. The stairs where I'd held Rachel when she broke her arm falling off her bike. David's old room where I'd read him bedtime stories every night for years. Thomas's room where we'd talked about his dreams of being an architect before he decided real estate was more practical. Every room held ghosts. Good ghosts. The ghosts of who we used to be before money and greed and fear turned us into enemies. At 9 o'clock, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Then something made me pick up. Mom. Thomas's voice. Shaking with rage. What the hell did you do? I protected myself. A restraining order? Against your own children? Are you insane? No, Thomas. That's the point. I'm not insane. I'm not incompetent. And I'm not going to let you lock me away so you can sell my house. We were trying to help you. You were trying to steal from me. I found the emails, Thomas. All of them. The 40-30-30 split. The developer who wants to build townhomes. Dr. Shaw's fake diagnosis. The forged Meadowbrook application. I know everything. Silence. Long and terrible. When Thomas spoke again, his voice was different. Cold. You're making a huge mistake. The only mistake I made was trusting you. We're not done with this. We're going to fight that protective order. We're going to prove you need help whether you think you do or not. Then I'll see you in court. I hung up. 10 minutes later, Rachel called. Then David. I didn't answer either call. Instead, I sat in my reading chair by the window and watched Mrs. Henderson's porch light come on across the street. Watched the world go about its normal evening business while my family exploded. And I wondered if winning this battle was going to cost me the war. If saving my house meant losing my children forever. If being right was worth being alone. But then I remembered Marcus's father. Dying alone, believing his son only wanted his money. Never knowing the truth until it was too late. And I knew with absolute certainty that sometimes standing up for yourself means standing alone. Tomorrow, they would wake up served with restraining orders. Tomorrow, they would realize I wasn't the easy target they thought I was. Tomorrow, the real war would begin. But tonight, I was still here. In my house. Free. And that would have to be enough. The restraining order gave me 3 weeks. 3 weeks before the full hearing where a judge would decide if my children's competency petition had merit or if my protective order would become permanent. 3 weeks to prove I wasn't the villain in this story. Edmund called Tuesday morning, the day my children had planned to ambush me at Dr. Shaw's office. Margaret, Dr. Shaw's office just called me. Apparently Thomas, Rachel, and David all showed up for your 10 o'clock appointment. Without you. What did Shaw say? According to his receptionist, he told them he couldn't conduct an evaluation without the patient present. Thomas allegedly became quite aggressive. Threatened to sue. Shaw's office asked them to leave. I felt a small, grim satisfaction. They're panicking. Yes. Which makes them dangerous. Margaret, I need you to be very careful. Desperate people do desperate things. He was right to worry. Over the next 48 hours, they tried everything. Rachel showed up at the library during my volunteer shift. The restraining order said she couldn't contact me, but apparently standing 10 feet away staring at me while I shelved books wasn't technically contact. She stood there for 20 minutes before the head librarian, Mrs. Patterson, asked her to leave. David drove past my house 6 times in one evening. Slow. Deliberate. Marcus, who was staying in my guest room now, counted each pass. He's trying to intimidate you, Marcus said. It's working. Thomas tried a different approach. He sent Patricia. She showed up at my door Thursday afternoon with a basket of muffins and tears in her eyes. Margaret, please. Thomas is devastated. He can't eat. Can't sleep. He's worried sick about you. Can't we just talk? Woman to woman. I looked at her through the screen door. The restraining order says no contact through third parties. You being here violates that order. I'm not here on Thomas's behalf. I'm here as your daughter-in-law who cares about you. No, you're not. You're here because you're worried about losing $480,000. That's Thomas's 40% of $1.2 million. I did the math. Her face changed. The tears dried up instantly. You're going to regret this, Margaret. All of this. When you're old and alone and nobody wants to deal with you anymore, you're going to remember that we tried to help. I'm already old, Patricia. And I'd rather be alone than stolen from. She left the muffins on the porch. I threw them away without opening the basket. Friday afternoon, Edmund called with news. Margaret, we have a problem. Thomas's lawyer filed a motion to dismiss your protective order. They're claiming it's retaliatory and baseless. The hearing got moved up. Monday, 9 a.m. That's only 3 days away. I know. They're pushing hard. We need to be ready. That night, Marcus and I sat at my kitchen table going over everything one more time. The emails. The property assessments. The forged documents. Dr. Chen's evaluation. Robert's letter. It's still not enough, I said. It's all circumstantial. They'll say the emails were just family discussions. That the property assessments were for estate planning. That they were genuinely concerned about my welfare. Marcus drummed his fingers on the table. Then stopped. What if we could prove intent? What if we could get them to admit what they were really doing? How? What if you gave them what they want? Or made them think you did? I looked at him. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we set a trap. Make them think they've won. Record them celebrating. Get them to say out loud what they've been planning all along. Marcus, that's smart, he interrupted. Mom Maggie, they think you're backed into a corner. They think the protective order is all you've got. What if we let them think it's about to fail? What if we make them believe they're about to get everything they wanted? I thought about it. About my children. About how greed had transformed them into people I didn't recognize. What exactly did you have in mind? We spent the next 2 hours planning. Then Marcus made a phone call. To David. Hey, man. It's Marcus. I know things are weird right now, but I need to talk to you. About your mom. Pause. No, I'm not on her side. I'm on the side of reality. Look, I've been staying with her, and, David, she's not doing well. She's confused. Paranoid. Yesterday she forgot what day it was. She's been talking about your dad like he's still alive. I think she needs help, and this restraining order is making everything worse. Long pause. Marcus listening. His face neutral. Yeah, I think if you guys came over tomorrow, maybe just to talk, she might listen. The restraining order expires at midnight Sunday anyway, pending the hearing. If you came over Sunday evening, technically it would be fine. Another pause. No, don't tell your lawyer. This isn't official. This is family. Just you, Thomas, Rachel. 6 o'clock. I'll make sure she's calm. He hung up. Looked at me. They're coming. All 3 of them. David's going to call Thomas and Rachel. He sounded eager. Too eager. I felt sick. I don't know if I can do this. You can. You have to. Because Monday morning, you're going to walk into that courtroom and show the judge exactly who your children really are. Saturday, Edmund came over. We spent 4 hours setting up. Marcus had called in a favor from a friend who did security systems. Tiny cameras, invisible to the naked eye, installed in the living room, kitchen, and dining room. Audio recording devices hidden in the bookshelf, under the lamp table, behind the clock on the mantel. This is legal, right? I asked Edmund. It's your house. Iowa is a one-party consent state. As long as one person in the conversation knows it's being recorded, that's you, it's legal. Everything they say can be used in court. What if they don't say anything incriminating? Then we still have everything else. But Margaret, people who think they've won get careless. They celebrate. They gloat. And when they do, we'll have it on record. Sunday evening arrived too fast. Marcus made sure I was dressed simply. No makeup. Hair a little messy. Old cardigan. I was supposed to look defeated. Worn down. Ready to give up. At exactly 6 o'clock, I saw 3 cars pull into my driveway. Thomas, Rachel, and David. All together. Coordinated. Remember, Marcus whispered. Let them talk. Ask questions. Be confused. Play the part they expect. I hate this. I know. But it's almost over. I opened the door before they knocked. They stood on my porch looking uncertain. Uncomfortable. Come in, I said quietly. They filed into my living room. Sat on the furniture like strangers. Thomas on the sofa. Rachel in the armchair. David on the piano bench. Marcus brought coffee. Set it on the table. No one touched it. Mom, Thomas began. His voice was careful. Gentle. The voice you use with someone fragile. Thank you for agreeing to see us. Marcus said you wanted to talk. We do. Mom, we miss you. These last 2 weeks have been awful. We hate that things got so out of hand. Rachel leaned forward. We were just trying to help. Maybe we went about it the wrong way, but our intentions were good. Were they? I asked. Silence. Mom, the restraining order ends tonight, David said. And tomorrow there's a hearing. Lawyers and judges, and it doesn't have to be that way. We can fix this. As a family. How? Thomas exchanged glances with his siblings. Some silent communication I couldn't read. We've been thinking. Maybe you're right. Maybe you should stay in the house. Maybe we pushed too hard about Meadowbrook. I blinked. You think I should stay? For now, Rachel added quickly. But Mom, you have to admit, maintaining this place is getting harder. What if we helped you? What if we hired people to do the yard work, the repairs? You could stay here, and we'd make sure everything was taken care of. That sounds expensive. Well, Thomas said slowly, that's something we wanted to discuss. If we sold the house now, while the market is high, you could buy something smaller. A nice condo. 1 floor. No maintenance. And there'd be money left over. Money we could divide now instead of later. There it was. The truth creeping out. You want me to sell. We want you to be practical, Mom. Thomas stood up. Started pacing. A habit he had when he was closing a deal. The house is worth over $1 million. Sitting here empty most of the time. That's not smart financially. If you sold it, moved somewhere easier, you'd have money to travel, to enjoy your retirement. And yes, we'd each receive our inheritance now instead of waiting. Everyone benefits. What happens to the money if I die before spending it? Mom, don't talk like that, Rachel said. Answer the question. Thomas stopped pacing. If you passed away with assets remaining, they'd be divided according to your will. We've been over this. 1.2 million divided 40-30-30. They all froze. What? Thomas said. That's the split you agreed on. In your emails. 40% for Thomas, 30 for Rachel, 30 for David. I've read them all. The room temperature dropped about 20 degrees. Mom, I don't know what you think you read, Rachel started. I read exactly what you wrote, Rachel. About inventorying my china before moving me to Meadowbrook so nothing would disappear. About making my travel plans sound like delusions to help Dr. Shaw's evaluation. David stood up. You went through our private emails? No, David. You left them on the desk in your old room. Along with the property assessments Thomas ordered. The forged Meadowbrook application that Patricia filled out. Dr. Shaw's fake diagnosis. Thomas's face went red. This is what I'm talking about. This paranoid behavior. Reading private correspondence and making wild accusations. Is the $1.2 million offer from the developer a wild accusation? I asked. Is the 40-30-30 split wild? Is Dr. Shaw diagnosing me with dementia without meeting me wild? We were trying to help you. Thomas shouted. You're losing your mind and you're too stubborn to see it. Then why forge my signature on the Meadowbrook application? Because you wouldn't sign it yourself. The words hung in the air. Thomas realized what he'd said. Tried to backtrack. I mean, that's not. You forged it, I said. You just admitted it. Mom, you're twisting everything. Am I twisting the fact that you filed for a competency hearing? That you tried to have me declared mentally incompetent so you could control my assets? Rachel stood up. Her face was pale. We were trying to protect you from yourself. You're making terrible decisions. The Italy trip. Refusing help. Acting paranoid. I'm not paranoid when people are actually conspiring against me, Rachel. We're not conspiring, she yelled. We're your children. We love you. You love my money. There's a difference. That is so unfair, David said, his voice breaking. We've given up weeks of our lives dealing with this. Hiring lawyers. Going to doctors. Trying to figure out how to help you. And this is the thanks we get. You didn't do any of that for me. You did it to me. Thomas walked toward me. Not threateningly, but close. Mom, listen to yourself. You're accusing us of fraud, conspiracy, theft. Your own children. Do you hear how crazy that sounds? I have evidence, Thomas. Evidence that you interpreted through the lens of paranoia. Any judge is going to see that tomorrow. Any doctor would agree that I'm perfectly competent. Like Dr. Chen said in her evaluation. Perfect score on every cognitive test. You manipulated those tests, Patricia said from the doorway. I hadn't noticed her come in. Thomas told me. You studied for them. You knew what they'd ask. So I'm either too confused to manage my own life or smart enough to manipulate medical tests. Which is it? No one answered. I stood up. Looked at each of my children. Tomorrow morning, a judge is going to decide whether your competency petition has merit or if my protective order becomes permanent. And you came here tonight to convince me to drop it. To sell the house voluntarily so you wouldn't have to force me out legally. That's not Rachel started. Yes, it is. Because if you actually cared about my welfare, you'd respect my choices. But you don't. You want me to make the choices that benefit you. And when I won't, you try to take away my right to choose at all. Thomas's mask finally cracked. Fine. You want the truth, Mom? Here it is. You're sitting on $1 million asset that you're doing nothing with. You're one fall, one stroke, one heart attack away from a nursing home anyway. We're just trying to plan ahead. Trying to make sure we're all taken care of. Is that so terrible? What about making sure I'm taken care of? You have Social Security. You have Dad's life insurance. You'd be fine in a smaller place. But instead, you're being selfish. Clinging to a house you can't maintain just because of sentiment. This isn't sentiment, Thomas. This is my life. Your life. He laughed. Bitter. Your life is over, Mom. You're almost 70. You have maybe 10, 15 years left. This house will stand for another 100. Why should it be empty just because you can't let go? My life is over. For words from my oldest son. The baby I'd nursed for 14 months because he wouldn't take a bottle. The boy I'd sat up with through nightmares and homework and heartbreaks. Get out, I said quietly. Mom. Get out of my house. All of you. Right now. You're making a mistake, Rachel said. No. The mistake I made was believing that raising you right would make you good people. That loving you unconditionally would teach you to love others. I was wrong. They left. Slowly. Reluctantly. But they left. Marcus and I stood in the empty living room, listening to their cars start, listening to them drive away. Did you get it? I whispered. Marcus checked his phone, streaming from the hidden cameras. Every word. Every admission. Thomas confessing to the forged signature. David's statement about hiring lawyers and doctors to control you. Rachel's admission about making you sound delusional. I sat down. My legs wouldn't hold me anymore. Mom, Maggie. My son just told me my life is over. Marcus knelt in front of me. Took my hands. Your old life is over. The life where you pretended they loved you more than money. But your real life. The one where you're free. That starts tomorrow. I cried then. Not sad tears. Rage tears. Relief tears. Grief tears all mixed together until I didn't know what I was feeling except that it hurt and it was necessary and it was finally done. Tomorrow morning, Judge Morrison would see the recordings. Would hear my children in their own words admitting to everything, the forgery, the conspiracy, the greed. Tomorrow, the truth would come out. But tonight, I mourned. For the family we could have been. For the children they should have been. For the mother who tried so hard and failed anyway. Marcus stayed with me. Didn't speak. Just held my hand while I cried. And when I finally stopped, when there were no tears left, I looked around my living room, my home, and knew that whatever happened tomorrow, I would never regret this choice. Choosing dignity over family. Truth over peace. Myself over them. Sometimes love means holding on. And sometimes it means letting go and watching them fall. Judge Sandra Morrison's courtroom smelled like old wood and lemon cleaner. I sat at the plaintiff's table next to Edmund, my hands folded on top of Robert's letter. Behind me, Marcus sat in the first row of the gallery. Across the aisle, Thomas, Rachel, and David sat with their lawyer, a man in an expensive suit named Gerald Hoffman. He had silver hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The kind of lawyer you hire when you're willing to spend a lot of money to win. Judge Morrison entered at exactly 9 o'clock. We all stood. She was younger than I expected, maybe 55, with sharp eyes and no-nonsense demeanor. She'd been a family court judge for 20 years, Edmund told me. She'd seen every kind of family destruction there was. Be seated. We're here for 2 motions. First, the petitioner's motion to dismiss the protective order issued against Thomas Whitmore, Rachel Whitmore Chen, and David Whitmore. Second, the petitioner's underlying motion for competency evaluation and potential guardianship of Margaret Whitmore. Mr. Hoffman, you filed to dismiss. You may begin. Hoffman stood. Smoothed his tie. Thank you, Your Honor. My clients are here today heartbroken and confused. They love their mother deeply. They've spent months trying to help her as she's declined cognitively and emotionally. And their reward for this devotion has been a baseless protective order that paints them as criminals. He painted a picture. Concerned children. Aging mother. Deteriorating house. Refused help. Paranoid accusations. Mrs. Whitmore has rejected every attempt at assistance, Hoffman continued. She's made wild claims that her children are conspiring against her. She's accused them of fraud without evidence. She's isolated herself, pushed away the people who love her most. These are not the actions of a competent adult making sound decisions. These are textbook signs of cognitive decline and paranoid delusions. He talked for 20 minutes. Made my children sound like saints. Made me sound like a confused old woman who'd lost touch with reality. When he finished, Judge Morrison turned to Edmund. Mr. Price. Edmund stood slowly, opened his briefcase. Your Honor, I'd like to present evidence. Proceed. Edmund handed the clerk a stack of documents. Property assessments addressed to Thomas. Emails discussing the 40-30-30 split. The forged Meadowbrook application. Dr. Shaw's preliminary report written without ever examining his patient. Judge Morrison reviewed each page. Her expression didn't change, but something in the courtroom shifted. I could feel it. Mr. Hoffman, did your clients obtain property assessments on Mrs. Whitmore's home without her knowledge? Hoffman stood. Your Honor, that's standard estate planning. The children needed to know the value of. Did they inform their mother? I believe they discussed it with her. You believe, or you know? They discussed estate planning generally with her, Your Honor. That's not what I asked. Judge Morrison held up one of the emails. Mr. Hoffman, this email from Thomas Whitmore discusses selling the property and splitting proceeds 40-30-30. It's dated 3 months before Mrs. Whitmore was even aware her children wanted her to move. How do you explain that? Your Honor, families discuss inheritance. It's natural for adult children to divide assets before their parent is deceased. Judge Morrison's voice was ice. To plan the sale of property they don't own? The courtroom went silent. Mr. Price, do you have additional evidence? Yes, Your Honor. Edmund nodded to Marcus. Marcus wheeled in a television on a cart. The kind they used to show us educational films in school. He connected a laptop. Your Honor, Edmund said, 2 nights ago, Mrs. Whitmore's children came to her home. The restraining order had not yet been formally served, so this visit was technically legal. Mrs. Whitmore, knowing the family hearing was scheduled for today, recorded the conversation. I'd like to play that recording now. Objection. Hoffman was on his feet. Any recording would be inadmissible without consent from all parties. Iowa is a one-party consent state, Edmund interrupted calmly. Mrs. Whitmore was present and aware of the recording. That's all the law requires. Judge Morrison considered. I'll allow it. But Mr. Price, this better be relevant. It is, Your Honor. The screen flickered to life. My living room appeared. The camera angle was from the bookshelf, facing the sofa. The judge watched. The entire courtroom watched. We heard Thomas say, if you sold it, moved somewhere easier, you'd have money to travel, to enjoy your retirement. And yes, we'd each receive our inheritance now instead of waiting. Everyone benefits. My voice. What happens to the money if I die before spending it? Thomas, if you passed away with assets remaining, they'd be divided according to your will. We've been over this. My voice. 1.2 million divided 40-30-30. The camera caught Thomas freezing. Rachel's face going pale. The recording continued. Every word. Every admission. David's angry response. You went through our private emails? My response about the forged Meadowbrook application. Thomas's explosion. Because you wouldn't sign it yourself. The courtroom was completely silent. I glanced at my children. Thomas was staring at the floor. Rachel was crying silently. David looked like he might be sick. The recording played on. Thomas's voice, loud and clear. Your life is over, Mom. You're almost 70. You have maybe 10, 15 years left. This house will stand for another 100. Why should it be empty just because you can't let go? Judge Morrison's face remained neutral, but her knuckles were white where she gripped her pen. The video ended. Marcus turned off the screen. Your Honor, Edmund said quietly, that recording was made 36 hours ago. Everything you just heard represents the true intentions of the petitioners. They don't want guardianship to protect their mother. They want it to control her assets. Judge Morrison looked at Hoffman. Counselor, did your client just admit on camera to forging his mother's signature on a legal document? Hoffman's face was red. Your Honor, Thomas was under duress. His mother had been making accusations. Did he or did he not admit to forgery? The statement was taken out of context. I heard the context, Mr. Hoffman. The entire conversation is context. Your client admitted to forging a signature. He admitted that property had been assessed and offers obtained without the owner's knowledge. He told his mother her life was over. Judge Morrison set down her pen. Mr. Hoffman, I've been a family court judge for 23 years. I've seen a lot of ugly family disputes. But I have never seen such calculated, coordinated financial exploitation attempted against an elderly parent. Your Honor, my clients were trying to help. By telling her that her life is over. By planning to divide her assets while she's still alive. By hiring a psychiatrist to diagnose her without examination. Judge Morrison shuffled through the papers. This report from Dr. Vernon Shaw. Has Dr. Shaw ever met Mrs. Whitmore? Silence. Mr. Hoffman? No, Your Honor. But he based his preliminary assessment on family reports. Family reports that were fabricated to create a paper trail for incompetency. Judge Morrison turned to me. Mrs. Whitmore, would you stand please? I stood. My legs were shaking. How old are you? 68, Your Honor. Do you know what day it is? Monday, November 18th. Who is the President of the United States? I answered. She asked me 5 more questions. Current events. Math. Problem solving. I answered them all. Mrs. Whitmore, do you believe you are competent to manage your own affairs? Yes, Your Honor. Do you wish to remain in your home? Yes, Your Honor. Do you believe your children have your best interests at heart? I looked at Thomas. At Rachel. At David. They were my babies once. I'd loved them before they were born. I'd dreamed about who they'd become. No, Your Honor. I don't. Judge Morrison nodded. Turned to my children. Would the petitioners please stand? Thomas, Rachel and David stood. I've reviewed all the evidence presented here today. The property assessments, the emails, the forged documents, the false medical report, and most damning, your own words recorded 2 nights ago. She paused. You 3 should be ashamed of yourselves. Rachel sobbed openly. David stared at his shoes. Thomas's jaw was clenched so tight I thought it might crack. Your mother is 68 years old. Not 90. Not incompetent. Not incapable of making decisions. She's a woman who has every legal and moral right to live in her own home, manage her own affairs, and die with dignity when her time comes. Instead, you've treated her like an obstacle to your inheritance. Judge Morrison picked up a document, signed it, handed it to the clerk. The motion to dismiss the protective order is denied. The protective order is hereby made permanent. Thomas Whitmore, Rachel Whitmore Chen, and David Whitmore are prohibited from contacting Margaret Whitmore directly or through third parties. They are prohibited from entering her property. They are prohibited from making any medical, financial, or legal decisions on her behalf. Hoffman started to object. Judge Morrison held up her hand. Furthermore, the petition for competency evaluation is denied. Mrs. Whitmore has demonstrated full capacity. She does not require guardianship. Judge Morrison looked directly at my children. Additionally, I am referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for investigation of elder abuse, fraud, and conspiracy to commit fraud. You may face criminal charges. The courtroom erupted. Hoffman was talking rapidly to Thomas. Rachel collapsed into her chair. David looked at me with something that might have been remorse or might have been shock. We're adjourned, Judge Morrison said, and left the courtroom. I sat down. Edmund was smiling. Marcus put his hand on my shoulder. You won, Edmund said quietly. Margaret, you won. But I didn't feel like I'd won anything. I turned around. Looked at my 3 children huddled with their lawyer. They looked smaller somehow. Diminished. Thomas caught my eye. For just a second, I saw my little boy. The one who used to climb into my lap and ask me to read him one more story. Then his face hardened. He turned away. They left the courtroom without looking at me. Filed out like strangers after a business meeting. Marcus drove me home. Neither of us spoke. When we pulled into my driveway, I saw Mrs. Henderson watering her roses across the street. Normal life going on. The world unchanged by what had just happened in that courtroom. How do you feel? Marcus asked. I don't know. Like I should be happy. Relieved. But you're not. I'm not. I looked at my house. My home. The place I'd fought so hard to keep. I won the house, Marcus. But I lost my children. You lost them a long time ago, Mom Maggie. Today you just made it official. He was right. I knew he was right. But it didn't make it hurt less. That night, I sat on my porch watching the sun set over Cedar Falls. The same sun that had set on this house for 42 years. The same view Robert and I used to watch together. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Mom. Thomas's voice. Quiet. Broken. Thomas. I wanted to say, he stopped. Started again. We destroyed it, didn't we? The family. Everything. Yes. I don't know how to fix it. I don't know if you can. Silence on the line. Then, I'm sorry. For what it's worth. I'm sorry. He hung up. I sat there holding my phone as the sky turned from orange to purple to black. And I understood something I'd been avoiding for months. Sometimes there are no happy endings. Sometimes you win the battle and lose the war. Sometimes doing the right thing costs you everything you love. But at least I still had my dignity. My home. My freedom. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. Spring came to Cedar Falls the way it always did. Slowly, then all at once. The magnolia tree in my front yard bloomed white and pink. Mrs. Henderson's roses started showing buds. And I woke up every morning in my own bed, in my own house, free. 6 months had passed since the hearing. 6 months of silence from Thomas, Rachel, and David. The district attorney had decided not to press criminal charges, insufficient evidence of criminal intent, they said, though the judge's referral had scared my children enough. They'd disappeared from my life as completely as if they'd never existed. Except for Thomas. He called once a month. Never asked for anything. Never tried to justify what they'd done. Just called to say he was thinking of me. To ask if I was okay. To tell me he was sorry. I never knew what to say to him. So mostly I listened. Marcus moved out of my guest room in January, back to his own apartment across town. But he still came by twice a week. Tuesdays for dinner. Saturdays to help with whatever needed fixing around the house. You know you don't have to keep checking on me, I told him one Tuesday evening in March. We were sitting on the porch watching the sun set, same as always. I know. Then why do you? He looked at me with those kind eyes. Because you're my family, Mom Maggie. That doesn't change just because the legal stuff is over. Family. Not blood. Not obligation. Choice. In February, something unexpected happened. I was at the library for my volunteer shift when a woman about my age approached me. Her name was Donna. She'd seen me there every week and finally worked up the courage to talk. I heard about what happened with your children, she said quietly. About the court case. My daughter tried something similar with me last year. Got a lawyer, tried to have me declared incompetent. I fought it, but I lost. I'm in supervised living now. She controls everything. My heart broke for her. I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry. Be useful. She handed me a business card. There are more of us than you think. Women whose children see them as retirement plans instead of mothers. We need people who've been through it. People who fought and won. We need you. The card read, Cedar Falls Elder Advocacy Group. Support, resources, legal assistance. I started attending meetings. Every Thursday evening in the basement of the Methodist Church. 12 women, all between 60 and 80. All with stories like mine. Some had won their battles. Some were still fighting. Some had lost everything. We shared resources. Contact information for honest lawyers. Doctors who wouldn't be bought. Ways to protect assets. How to recognize the signs of financial exploitation before it was too late. And we shared something more important than information. We shared the truth that we weren't crazy. Weren't paranoid. Weren't obstacles. We were mothers who'd given everything and discovered that sometimes everything isn't enough. By April, the group had grown to 23 women. We moved to a bigger space. Started a hotline. Created information packets. I found myself at the center of something I'd never expected, a community of survivors. You're good at this, Marcus told me one Saturday. He was fixing the gutter that had come loose during a spring storm while I worked on flyers for the next meeting. At what? At turning your pain into purpose. I thought about that. About how 6 months ago I'd been fighting for my freedom. And now I was helping other women fight for theirs. Marcus, can I ask you something? Always. Do you think I did the right thing? Taking it to court? Destroying what was left of my relationship with my kids? He climbed down from the ladder. Sat beside me on the porch steps. Mom Maggie, they destroyed it. Not you. You just refused to pretend it wasn't already broken. But maybe if I'd tried harder. Maybe if I'd. No. His voice was firm. I watched my dad do that. Keep trying. Keep bending. Keep sacrificing pieces of himself to keep Carol happy. And you know what it got him? He died alone, convinced his own son hated him. You didn't do that. You stood up. You fought. And yeah, it cost you. But at least you're still you. He was right. I knew he was right. But late at night, when the house was quiet and I was alone with my thoughts, I still wondered. Still questioned. Still grieved for the family that could have been. In May, something else happened. Edmund called me into his office. Margaret, I need to talk to you about your will. What about it? Robert's clause, the one that disinherits anyone who tries to force you out, it's still active. If you died tomorrow, your children would get nothing. I know. Is that what you want? I thought about it. Really thought about it. I don't know, Edmund. What would Robert want? Robert wanted you protected. But he also loved his children. Flawed as they are. Edmund leaned back in his chair. Margaret, you won. You proved your point. You protected yourself. The question now is, what kind of person do you want to be in victory? I went home that day and thought about his question for hours. Walked through every room of my house. Remembered every moment that mattered. Robert building the porch. Thomas taking his first steps in the kitchen. Rachel learning to bake cookies at the counter. David's first piano recital in the living room. This house held all of it. The love and the loss. The joy and the betrayal. All of it layered like paint on old walls. At sunset, I called Edmund. I want to change the will. To what? The house goes to Marcus. He's earned it. He's been more of a son than my own sons. I paused. But the rest, the savings, the investments, everything else, that gets divided equally between Thomas, Rachel, and David. With one condition. What condition? They can't access it for 10 years. And during those 10 years, half of any interest earned goes to the Cedar Falls Elder Advocacy Group. If they contest this arrangement, they lose everything and it all goes to the advocacy group. Edmund was quiet. That's actually brilliant. You're giving them their inheritance, but making them wait. Making them think about what they did. And using the interest to help other people in the meantime. Robert always said money reveals character. This way, we'll see what kind of people they become in 10 years. Whether they learn anything or just stay angry. And Marcus gets the house. Marcus gets the house. Because houses aren't about money. They're about love. And he's the only one who understood that. I signed the new will that afternoon. Felt something lift from my chest. Not forgiveness. Not reconciliation. But something like peace. That evening, Thomas called. His monthly check-in. Mom, how are you? I'm okay, Thomas. How are you? Patricia and I are divorcing. I closed my eyes. I'm sorry. Don't be. She left me when the money didn't come through. Said she didn't sign up to be married to a man who'd destroyed his inheritance for pride. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Turns out she was just like me. All about the money. Thomas. I've been going to therapy. Twice a week. Trying to figure out how I turned into the kind of person who'd do what I did to you. Have you figured it out? Long silence. Yeah. I think I forgot that you were a person. You became a symbol. The house. The inheritance. The obstacle. I forgot you were my mom. I felt tears start. Blinked them back. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I see it now. What I did. What we all did. And I'm trying to be better. That's all any of us can do, Thomas. Try to be better. After we hung up, I sat on my porch in the growing dark. Thought about Robert. About what he'd say if he were here. He'd probably tell me I was too soft. That they didn't deserve my mercy. But he'd also tell me that mercy isn't about what people deserve. It's about who you want to be. I looked at my house. My home. The place I'd fought so hard to keep. And I realized something. I didn't win because I kept the house. I won because I kept myself. My dignity. My autonomy. My right to make my own choices, even the choice to show mercy when mercy wasn't earned. That night, I slept better than I had in months. And when I woke up to sun streaming through my bedroom window, to birds singing in the magnolia tree, to another day in the home I'd built with love and defended with courage, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Gratitude. Not for what I had, though I was grateful for that too. But gratitude for what I'd learned. That love without respect is manipulation. That family without boundaries is prison. That sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stand alone. And that even in victory, there's room for grace. Marcus showed up that morning with bagels and coffee. We sat at my kitchen table, same as we'd done 100 times before. You look different today, he said. Lighter. I changed my will yesterday. His eyebrows went up. Yeah. You're getting the house. He set down his coffee. Stared at me. Mom Maggie, I can't. You can. You will. Because this house needs someone who loves it more than what it's worth. Someone who'll take care of it. Someone who'll understand what it means. What about your kids? They're getting the rest. In 10 years. With conditions. It's complicated, but it's fair. Or as fair as I can make it. Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then, thank you. For trusting me with it. Thank you for showing me what family really means. We sat in comfortable silence, drinking coffee in the kitchen where I'd spent 42 years making meals and memories. And I understood that this moment, this peace, this choice was the real inheritance Robert left me. Not the house. Not the money. But the wisdom to know the difference between what matters and what doesn't. And to fight like hell for what matters, no matter the cost. Have you ever had to choose between family and freedom? Between love and self-respect? Tell me how you found your way through. Because 6 months ago, I thought losing my children was the worst thing that could happen. Today, I understand that losing myself would have been so much worse. 2 years after the courthouse, I stood in Edmund's office for what I hoped would be the last time. The afternoon sun came through the windows at the same angle it had that first day when I'd walked in angry and scared and determined to protect myself. Today, I walked in at peace. Margaret. Edmund stood and shook my hand. You look well. I feel well. We sat at his conference table. The same table where we'd planned my defense. Where we'd reviewed evidence of my children's betrayal. Where we'd built a case that saved my life. You said you wanted to discuss the estate one more time? I do. I want to make sure everything is exactly right. Clear. No room for misinterpretation. Edmund opened a folder. Let's review. Upon your death, the house at 847, Maple Drive goes to Marcus Reed, free and clear. All financial assets, savings, investments, life insurance are held in trust for 10 years. During that time, 50% of interest earned goes to Cedar Falls Elder Advocacy Group. After 10 years, the principal is divided equally among Thomas, Rachel, and David. If any of them contests the will, they forfeit their share entirely and it goes to the advocacy group. That's correct. And you're certain about this? You have the right to disinherit them completely. After what they did. I know what they did, Edmund. I'll never forget it. But I also know what Robert would want. He'd want them to have a chance to become better people. Even if it takes 10 years. Edmund nodded slowly. There's something else. Something I think you should know. What? Thomas has been paying into the Elder Advocacy Group. Monthly donations. Anonymous, but I recognized the account routing number from when I handled his father's estate. I sat back in my chair. How much? $500 a month. For the last year. $500. $6,000 a year. Not enough to buy forgiveness. But enough to show he was trying. Does he know I know? I don't think so. I only know because I'm on the board of directors for the advocacy group. We have to report all donations over a certain amount. I thought about Thomas. About his monthly phone calls that had continued for 2 years now. About how he'd never once asked about the will. Never asked when I'd forgive him. Never asked for anything except to tell me he was sorry. Don't tell him I know, I said finally. Are you sure? Some things are more meaningful when they're done in private. Let him have this. Edmund made a note. What about Rachel and David? Have you heard from them? Rachel sends a card every Christmas. Generic. Hallmark. She signs it love, Rachel, but there's nothing in it. No letter. No update on her life. Just the card. And David? Nothing. 2 years of complete silence. I looked out the window at downtown Cedar Falls. At the life going on below. I don't think David knows how to apologize. I don't think he knows how to admit he was wrong. So he just stays away. That must hurt. It does. But you know what hurts more? Pretending someone loves you when they only love what you can give them. At least now I know the truth. Edmund closed the folder. Margaret, I've been practicing law for 45 years. I've seen a lot of families destroy themselves over money. But I've never seen someone handle it with as much grace as you have. I don't feel graceful. Most days I feel angry, sad, cheated out of the family I thought I'd have in my old age. But you don't let it consume you. You turned it into something good. The advocacy group has helped, 40 women now? 53. We just helped a woman in Des Moines fight off her son's guardianship petition. Used the same strategy you and I developed. It worked. Edmund smiled. Robert would be proud of you. I hope so. We finalized the paperwork. I signed everything. Dated it. Edmund had it witnessed and notarized. One more thing, Edmund said as I was leaving. Marcus doesn't know about the house, does he? No. I don't want him to feel obligated. Don't want him visiting because he's waiting for an inheritance. I want him to visit because he wants to. He does, though. Want to, I mean. I see you two at the diner sometimes. The way he looks at you, that's not obligation. That's love. I know. That's why he deserves the house. I left Edmund's office and drove home through Cedar Falls. Past the library where I volunteered. Past the Methodist church where the advocacy group met. Past the diner where Marcus and I had breakfast every Sunday. Past all the ordinary places that had become extraordinary because they were mine. Because I'd fought for the right to live my life on my own terms. When I pulled into my driveway, Marcus's truck was already there. He was on the porch, waiting. Hey, Mom Maggie. Thought we could have dinner on the porch tonight. I brought Chinese from Golden Dragon. Marcus, you didn't have to. I know. But I wanted to. We ate on the porch as the sun set. Watched Mrs. Henderson across the street working in her garden. She was 86 now, still living independently, still proving that age wasn't a prison sentence. Marcus, can I ask you something? Anything. Do you ever regret it? Getting involved in all this? Taking my side against David? It cost you your friendship with him. Marcus set down his chopsticks. David stopped being my friend long before the court case. Real friends don't let their mothers get abused. Real friends stand up for what's right even when it's hard. You lost a lot because of me. I didn't lose anything that mattered. And I gained something I never thought I'd have again after my mom died. I gained a mother. He looked at me. You know what the difference is between you and David's actual mom? What? You ask me how I'm doing. You listen to my stories. You call me when you're worried about me. You show up. That's what makes someone a mother. Not biology. Showing up. I felt tears start. Happy tears this time. Thank you for showing up for me. Thank you for letting me. We sat in comfortable silence as the sky turned from gold to pink to purple. And I thought about families. About how we're born into one but sometimes have to build another. About how the people who love us best aren't always the people who share our blood. My phone rang. Thomas. Mom. Hi, Thomas. I wanted to tell you something. Patricia and I finalized the divorce last week. I'm sorry. Don't be. She did me a favor. Showed me what I'd become. What I'd chosen. He paused. Mom, I joined a group. For people who've financially exploited family members. It's a support group. We talk about what we did. Why we did it. How to live with it. That's good, Thomas. Really good. There's a woman in the group whose son tried to steal her house. Just like I tried to do to you. Every time she talks, I hear your voice. I see what I put you through. His voice cracked. How do you live with that, Mom? How do you live knowing you tried to destroy someone who only ever loved you? One day at a time, Thomas. You wake up. You try to be better. You help other people so they don't make your mistakes. That's all you can do. Do you think he stopped? Started again? Do you think there's any chance, someday, that we could be something again? Not what we were. I know that's gone. But something? I looked at Marcus. At the man who'd been more family to me than my own blood. At the person who'd shown up when showing up mattered most. I don't know, Thomas. Time will tell. That's fair. That's more than fair. He was quiet for a moment. I love you, Mom. I know I showed it badly. I know I almost destroyed you because of money and greed and stupidity. But I did love you. I do love you. I know, sweetheart. Love was never the problem. Respect was. After we hung up, I told Marcus about the conversation. Do you think you'll reconcile with him? He asked. Maybe. Eventually. But it won't be the same. It can't be. No. But maybe it could be something honest. Something real. Not based on what you can give him, but on who you both actually are. Maybe. As full dark settled over Cedar Falls, I went inside and pulled out a piece of paper. Started writing. To whoever is reading this after I'm gone. My name was Margaret Eleanor Whitmore. I lived 68 years before I learned the hardest lesson of my life, that people can love you and hurt you at the same time. That the children you raise with everything you have might still see you as an obstacle to what they want. I fought a war I never wanted. Against people I'd loved before they were born. And I won, but winning looked different than I'd imagined. I didn't win because I kept my house, though I did keep it. I didn't win because a judge ruled in my favor, though she did. I won because I kept my dignity, my autonomy, my right to be a person, not a problem to be solved or an asset to be managed. If you're reading this and fighting a similar battle, if your children see you as an inheritance instead of a mother, a burden instead of a blessing, I want you to know something. You are not crazy. You are not selfish. You are not the villain for wanting to live your own life in your own way for as long as you're able. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stand alone. I left my house to Marcus Reed because he understood what houses really are. Not investments. Not inheritances. But containers for love. Places where families are built, one meal at a time, one conversation at a time, one act of showing up at a time. I left my money to my children because despite everything, they're still my children. And love, real love, doesn't evaporate just because it's tested. It changes shape. It sets boundaries. But it endures. If I could give advice to anyone facing what I faced, it would be this: fight for yourself. Document everything. Find allies. Trust lawyers like Edmund and friends like Marcus. Protect your assets not because you're greedy, but because your freedom depends on it. And when you win, because if you're reading this, I hope you do win, remember that victory doesn't mean revenge. It means you get to define the rest of your life on your own terms. I'm 70 years old now as I write this. I've outlived predictions, survived betrayals, and built a community of women who refuse to disappear just because their children wish they would. My life didn't end at 68 when my children tried to erase me. It began again. Stronger. Clearer. More mine than it had ever been. And if that's not a happy ending, I don't know what is. With love and hard-won wisdom. Margaret. I folded the letter. Put it in an envelope with my will. Instructions that it should be read when I die, to whoever needs to hear it. Then I went back to the porch where Marcus was still sitting, looking at the stars. You know what Robert used to say? I asked, settling into my chair. What? That the best inheritance you can leave your children isn't money. It's the example of a life well lived. Of choices made with courage. Of standing up for what matters. He was right. He was. I looked at my house. At the porch he'd built with his own hands. At the magnolia tree we'd planted our first spring here. At all the physical things that held our history. And you know what? I think I finally gave my children that inheritance. Not the one they wanted, but the one they needed. How do you figure? I showed them that you can't love someone into giving you what you want. That manipulation eventually reveals itself. That dignity matters more than dollars. I smiled. Whether they learn those lessons or not, that's up to them. But at least I taught them. Marcus raised his water glass. To teaching the hard lessons. I clinked my glass against his. And to the family we choose when the family we're born with forgets how to love us. We sat on that porch until late, talking about everything and nothing. And when I finally went to bed that night, I didn't feel angry or sad or cheated. I felt complete. My children fought over my estate. So I left the house to the one who never asked. And in doing so, I taught them all what inheritance really means. It's not about money or property or things you can hold in your hands. It's about showing up. About loving without conditions. About respecting someone's right to their own life, even when that life doesn't include you the way you'd hoped. That's the inheritance that matters. The one that lasts. And the only one worth fighting for. And so, here we are, at the end of a story that never truly ends, because stories like mine don't close with a single breath. They settle into the wood grain of old kitchen tables. They linger in the quiet spaces between what was said and what was meant. You stayed with me through all of it. Through the lawyer's pen and the children's greed. Through the courtroom and the tears. Through every moment I thought I might break but chose to bend instead. Thank you for that. For listening. For bearing witness to an old woman who refused to disappear just because it would have been more convenient for everyone else. I want to tell you something before you go. Something I learned in these 70 years of living, loving, and learning when to let go. The kitchen door is open now. Just slightly. Not thrown wide, I'm too old for grand gestures, but enough. Enough for the morning light to find its way across the worn floorboards. Enough for the scent of coffee to drift out onto the porch where Marcus sits reading the paper, his feet up on the railing like he belongs there. Because he does. Because belonging isn't about blood. It's about showing up with bagels when someone's world is falling apart. It's about standing in courtrooms and on porches and in all the small, unglamorous moments that make up a life. Some mornings, I stand in that doorway and breathe in the smell of this house. Old wood and lemon cleaner and something else, memory, maybe, or grace. The magnolia tree blooms pink and white outside my window, same as it has for 42 years. Mrs. Henderson still waters her roses across the street. The world keeps turning, indifferent to our small human dramas. And I am still here. Still free. Still mine. There's a cup on my counter right now. One of those blue-flowered ones my mother gave me. The ones Rachel never cared about until she realized they might be valuable. It sits there empty, waiting for tea I haven't made yet. But it's there. In my house. On my counter. Mine to use or not use, as I choose. That's what freedom looks like, you know. Not grand. Not dramatic. Just a cup on a counter in a house you fought to keep. I learned something in all of this. Something that took me 68 years and a courtroom battle to understand. You don't need anyone's permission to take up space in your own life. You don't need your children's approval to matter. You don't need a judge's signature to prove you exist. You don't need the world's applause before you decide you're worth keeping. The house still creaks at night. The same creaks Robert and I used to lie in bed and listen to, back when we were young and thought we'd live forever. I know each sound now. The third stair from the top. The hallway floorboard near the bathroom. The way the windows rattle when the wind comes from the west. These are the sounds of home. Not perfect. Not silent. But mine. Thomas still calls every month. We talk about small things, the weather, his therapy, whether I've seen any good movies. We don't talk about the money or the lawyers or the things he said that can never be unsaid. Maybe someday we will. Maybe someday we won't need to. David sends nothing. Rachel sends cards with no words inside. And that's all right. I grieved for the children I thought I had. I mourned the family we could have been. But grief, I've learned, eventually makes room for other things. For Marcus's terrible jokes. For the women in my advocacy group who understand without explanations. For quiet Saturday mornings when no one wants anything from me except my company. If you're listening to this in your own kitchen, in your own chair, wondering if you're being selfish for wanting to keep what's yours, you're not. If your children are counting your days instead of cherishing them, you're not imagining it. If you feel like an obstacle in someone else's plan, you're not the problem. Stand up. Document everything. Find your Marcus. Find your Edmund. Fight like hell for the right to be a person, not a problem to be solved. And know this, winning might look different than you think. It might be lonely. It might cost you people you love. But losing yourself costs more. I wake up every morning in my own bed. I make my own coffee. I decide how to spend my own money and my own time and my own love. Some days I give it to Marcus. Some days to the women who need my story. Some days to the memory of Robert, who knew before I did that I'd need protecting. And some days, I keep it all for myself. Every bit of love I have left, I pour back into me. Into the woman who survived. Who fought. Who refused to be erased. That's not selfish. That's survival. And survival is holy work. The light is fading now as I tell you this. That golden hour light that makes everything look softer, kinder than it really is. But even in the honest light of morning, I regret nothing. Not the fight. Not the cost. Not the family I lost to keep myself. Because here's what I know now that I didn't know at 68. You can begin again. At any age. In any circumstance. With nothing but your dignity and your will to keep living life on your own terms. It's never too late to choose yourself. To set the boundary. To say no. To walk away. To fight back. It's never too late to begin again. My story ends here, but yours doesn't. Somewhere out there, maybe you're listening and seeing yourself in my words. Maybe you're realizing that the voice telling you you're too difficult, too stubborn, too much, that voice is wrong. You are not too much. You are exactly enough. And you deserve to live freely in the home you built, with the love you choose, for as long as you're given. Remember, family is built, not born. Worth is inherent, not earned. And the bravest thing you can ever do is stand alone and refuse to apologize for taking up space. My name is Margaret Eleanor Whitmore. I am 70 years old. And I am still here. Still fighting. Still free. Still choosing myself, every single day. May you do the same. If you liked this story, please hit like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching.